Welcome to my assembly today. We're going to begin my assembly just as we have done with the last few. We're going to think about those special mentions. So you need to look out for your name, see if it appears. There are lots of really great things going on. Too many for me to pick out individuals. You are all doing an amazing job. Very well done. Look out for your name. Some of you have still been doing some great reading for Dr. Nissan. She's really proud of you, and we're adding to our millionaires list. So there are a few of you that have got your names up behind me in a minute. Your name in lights for that great reading that you've been doing. See if you can make yourself a word millionaire before the end of term. You've still got 2 weeks to go. Happy reading. The list of commendations is still growing. Very well done. I know of lots of you that have been given commendations for the great work that you've been doing, and you're on to your next badge. How many badges have you managed to get during lockdown? I wonder. Is your name up behind me today? Have a look. Well done. Any more birthdays? I'm sure there are some. Your name will come up in lights. Happy birthday if you've had your birthday in lockdown. Happy birthday to anyone in your family as well during lockdown. Enjoy.
You are full of love and grace. It pleases us to see your smiling face, to see you rise and be a star. We know that you'll go really far. This life is short and you have just begun. So have a happy birthday. Celebrate and dance with all your might. Have a happy birthday. Laugh and sing and celebrate. Laugh and sing and celebrate. Laugh and sing and celebrate your life.
So my last few assemblies have been about dreaming big, going for those goals. So I'm going to carry on with that theme today, and my my theme today is going for gold. A slight variation, but still along those lines. Dreaming big, making sure that you always strive to do your best and you will achieve. The world behind me. My assembly today is about a sporting event that encompasses the whole world. All those countries that you can see. Do you know what countries you can see on this part of the world at the moment? Do you know which sporting event I may be thinking about, talking about today? There's a big clue in the title of Going for Gold. 3 sports are going to appear. Can you name those sports? What are the names of those 3 games? So, what is that world famous greatest sporting event that we're going to talk about? These sports are all in that event, and there's now a really big clue to let you know which one it is. So it is the Olympic Games. I know some of you have been thinking about that in your classes during your learning this week, or you may be looking at it next week, but the Olympic Games. I know Mr. Tunnell's going to be really sad now that I'm talking about the Olympic Games because he had tickets to go to the Olympics this year. The Olympics were supposed to be going on in this summer holiday, but unfortunately due to lockdown, they have been cancelled. And poor Mr. Tunnell didn't get to go and see all those sports. So sorry, Mr. Tunnell, but you've had a special mention in my assembly. So the modern Olympic Games were first held in Athens, in Greece, in 1896. And they were the idea of a Frenchman. Does anyone know who that was? I wonder who's been listening or who knows this information anyway. It was Baron Pierre de Coubertin. Here's a picture of him. He had the idea of a great sporting competition where all countries could come to get together in peace to celebrate, to compete, but in peace to celebrate. So there was to be shooting, fencing, weightlifting, swimming, gymnastics, but the highlight was the first ever Olympic marathon run on the 11th of August 1896. Where did the Baron get the idea for a marathon from? Ancient Greece, about 3,000 years ago. These were held in honour of the Greek god Zeus at Olympia. At first, they lasted only one day, and they were only running races. But soon, the competition developed into 5 days and covered events like wrestling, chariot racing, and throwing the javelin and discus. So people would travel from all over Greece to compete and to watch it. And for them to be able to travel to Olympia, the wars had to stop that were going on. So if there was any fighting, they would stop so that it was safe for people to travel and people to get to those places. And then once the games had taken place, the wars, and everyone had gone home again, the wars reconsumed and they started up again. The Greeks held their games every 4 years, and that's what we still do the same today. There were very few rules by our standards. Today, for the modern Olympics, there are lots of rules that people have to fulfill to be able to partake in those games. In wrestling, in ancient times, the only rules that there were was that you weren't allowed to bite or poke your opponent's eyes out. So slightly different today, we have those rules, but many more as to how you can compete in wrestling. One big difference between the ancient Olympics and the modern Olympics was that in the ancient Olympics, married women were not allowed to compete, and they weren't even allowed to go and watch. If you were an unmarried woman, you were allowed to take part in a running race. And that didn't change straight away in the modern Olympics when they first started in 1896. Women weren't allowed to compete, they weren't allowed to take part until a Greek lady took part in a marathon race the day after the men. And it took her 5.5 hours to complete that marathon. But nowadays in the Olympics, men and women both take part. The Olympics though, where does it take place? We've established that it's become a modern Olympics, that it takes place every 4 years, and there should have been an Olympics this year. Do you know, because I haven't mentioned it, do you know where that should have been this year? Where may Mr. Tunnell have been travelling to? You're right, it should have been in Tokyo. So the modern Olympics didn't just take its ideas from the ancient Greeks, but Baron Pierre de Coubertin also took his ideas from the Olympic Games of Much Wenlock. This is a place in Shropshire, in England, and there was a local doctor there, William Brooks, who wanted to encourage good health and exercise in the people of his area. So he designed the Wenlock Olympic Games, and that took place for the first time in 1850. And he had cycle races on a penny farthing bikes. Do you know what those are? We'll see a picture of those in a minute. And an old woman's race where the prize was a pound of tea. This cycle was called a penny farthing because in those days a penny was a large coin and a farthing was a small coin. And as you can see, the penny farthing has a very large front wheel and a much smaller rear wheel. One of the logo characters for the 2012 Games in London was Wenlock, because it commemorated those Wenlock Games where we got some ideas from the modern Olympics from. Does anyone remember the other character? It was probably quite a long time ago, but your parents might remember, and they might be able to help you with this. The other character for our Olympic Games in 2012 when they came to London was a character called Mandeville. And he was a character that was used because it represented the Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which held the first games for disabled people in 1948. So it was doing something for those people. Those taking part were all injured in the Second World War. And the only sport was archery because it could be done from a wheelchair. Whereas today, our modern Olympics nowadays, we have a Paralympics as well as an Olympics to allow for everybody to compete, to allow for everybody to celebrate and to go for gold. So, the Olympics, I want you to think, why have we thought about that today? It's a sport, it's a celebration, it's something that's very important in the world that we live in today. But also, Baron Pierre de Coubertin, this is one of his quotes. I think the first line is very, very important. The important thing in the Olympic Games is not to win, but to take part. And lots of my messages over the last few weeks have been about taking part, have been about going for gold, dreaming big, trying your hardest, striving for everything that you can possibly do. I think in these times, that's what everyone's done. You've made me very, very proud with all the different things that you do, the work that you do, the way that you have looked after each other, the way that you have been kind. It's the taking part and making sure that you always do your best that is the most important thing. And all of those people that would have been competing in the Olympic Games, that's what they would have been doing. They would have been going for gold. They would have been doing their very best as much as they possibly can. So still stick with that. Remember that saying, go for gold, try your hardest. Have a nice weekend, everybody.